I like to avoid talking about politicians and such, and I really like to avoid talking about specific politicians, but this time I can't avoid it because of the recent impeachment of their supreme leader, or Her Majesty, or whatever they're calling that person nowadays. And at exactly the same time, there was this State of the Union address nonsense, and I'm always amazed at the pomp and circumstance that goes on with that. It's crazy, and all the people clapping and all the people acting all mad, and it's quite the theater. So I've got that I'd like to talk about. I also have a poll result that I would like to talk about. I listed a poll on the Facebook page from Porch Anarchast, and I was given some feedback on that, and I can't wait to talk about the Libertarian Party. Actually, I can, but I'd like to talk about the Libertarian Party. So to start out, I'd like to thank you for your input on the podcast. Like I said earlier, I threw that out there asking for some feedback, and I received it, and I appreciate that. I've struggled with the structure of the podcast since the beginning, so I thought, well, who better to ask than the listeners, right? And thankfully, some of you took me up on that offer. Now, that being said, please keep in mind that I've listened to a lot of podcasts. A lot. Like, there have been weeks where the only human voices I heard, other than my own, were from podcasts. If you've listened to the podcast, I've spent some time in the woods, living completely off-grid, and so sometimes I just download some podcasts when I'm in town and then head back out, and sometimes you get in there and you're there for weeks before you come back out, and I think the longest I ever spent in there was 2 weeks maybe, but man, yeah, podcasts will save your life, especially when there's no TV or even any reliable radio signal to get. Even listening to Stefan Molyneux is a welcome change when your company is just some dogs. Anyway, so I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and many of those podcasts that are about liberty or anarchy, they revolve around interviewing guests. And if you listen to many of those podcasts, you're going to start hearing the same old story from the same old people. You're going to hear a lot about cryptocurrency, you're going to hear a lot about social justice, and you're going to hear a lot about things that are socialist and communist, and it's all going to be coming from people who claim to be anarchists. So, that's not what I want for Front Porch Anarchast.